Broadcasting from Manhattan Beach and the World Wide Web, you're listening to CHSR, HealthyLife.net.
Hello, and welcome to the show. I'm Dr. Lindsay Ghannam, and you are listening to the Calm Coach Radio, where every month I do my best to bring you natural solutions, remarkable remedies, tools, and techniques to improve your mental health and gain relief from conditions like anxiety and depression. So if you've dealt with either of these conditions, anxiety and or depression, if someone you love is dealing with anxiety right now, please stay tuned. On today's show, we are going to be talking about food for mood. That's right, understanding how food can improve mood or influence mood. And this show is a big deal for me because I know for those of you who are feeling stressed out or who are dealing with anxiety, there are things you can do today. There are foods you can bring in right now that are going to help, and they're going to help you build resilience to stress and anxiety, and they can and will help you in feeling more calm. And I have an amazing guest today who is going to help us get there. I'd like to welcome to the show Mrs. Kimberly Spair. Kimberly is on a mission to help you reclaim your health. She is an intuitive healer, a health coach, a mother, a brave entrepreneur in the field of health and wellness. She understands the deeper connection between the body and the mind and is committed to helping you live a more vibrant, full, and beautiful life. She believes that total healing is available to anyone who is willing to embark on a healing path and has helped thousands of women in that journey. Kimberly, thank you so much for being here and for all that you are doing to get this information out there.
Hi, Dr. Lindsay. It's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. So I have to ask, what inspired you to do this type of work?
This is such a loaded question for me. I've always been interested in the why, so to speak. I started my career as a licensed speech pathologist, spent my days rehabilitating children and adults following strokes, trauma, placement of feeding tubes and tracheostomies, working with diagnoses such as autism and developmental delay. I dealt with a lot of complex feeding issues, sensory issues, which a lot of that resulted, in anxiety and depression. So that's where, some of this kind of comes together with what we're going to talk about. Through my many years of schooling, I was often faced with the term etiology unknown after learning about certain diagnoses. And even as a young student, this statement always blew my mind. And I often wondered about our food, about our water, and other contributing environmental factors. What I didn't know at that time was that years into my own career, I would be struck with my own neurological Lyme and resulting, I use quotation marks here, autoimmune condition. To make a very long story short, I went to the best doctors and specialists and functional medicine doctors and practitioners. And after lots of testing and searching and prodding, I eventually ended up studying holistic health and nutrition, yoga therapy, and mind-body medicine.
Wow, Kimberly, I just imagine that so many people listening can relate to your story, myself included. I think it's very, very common. Not common how you've risen out of the ashes and chosen to dedicate your life to this type of work. Now, I want to read really quick this quote from Anthony William, the medical medium. It reads, Kimberly brings an enormous amount of compassion and light to her work as a healer. Her personal experience of overcoming chronic health issues while managing the demands of her busy life as a mother, wife, and health practitioner gives her a special and invaluable insight into the challenges and struggles so many of her clients face. I deeply respect and honor Kimberly and her genuine commitment to helping her clients heal. She is a true ambassador of the healing information I share. Anthony William, medical medium. So that's just incredible, and I think it really describes the work that you're doing. So how were you first introduced to Anthony, and how do you feel that his work has influenced you?
So Anthony was the answer to my prayers after a long, dark, scary journey. I found Anthony's work 3 years into my diagnosis at my very lowest point. I actually prayed on my knees one night, begging God in tears I was so sick of suffering with chronic symptoms, brain fog, tingles, numbness, tremors, muscle spasms, dizziness, such an over-fatigued nervous system. My adrenals were screaming. I was having ocular migraines. My thyroid hormones were completely out of whack. I had a TSH of 93. Any of you that have been in the thyroid world, you know that you want your TSH between 1 and 1.5. Mine was 93. Mm-hmm. So after this little breakdown, as you will, the next morning I woke up, and somehow Anthony's website was on my computer screen after I was clicking through, I don't know, emails or whatever I was doing. This was before the first book came out. So I quickly, jumped in and was reading. Of course, I was skeptical, like anyone that finds this. I have a Christian background and medical medium and all of those things that most people, are first are like, what is this? But I quickly saw the love and compassion and, the pure, wanting to help that Anthony is out there, preaching and doing and giving of himself. And I reached out for a consultation with him. I was lucky enough to have a consultation right as the first book, Medical Medium, hit the shelves. And as I started to watch massive shifts and healing in my own body, I started to transition my nutritional pieces of my practice to his information. It's the information that saved my life. It pulled me back from a horrendous place in my life, and little by little I transitioned my practice to, using his information as support. So supporting first children and then adults.
Wow, and I always say for anyone who's skeptical, just check out Anthony's Facebook page and all of the tens of thousands of people who are recovering from mystery illness. It's just incredible to me. Now, the topic of our show today is, of course, food for mood. So I just wanted to pick your brain a little bit. When a person is suffering from chronic stress that eventually leads to anxiety, in my line of work, we generally offer them two options. We either recommend that they see a therapist or maybe a coach, or we recommend that the person see a psychiatrist and consider medication to get some help with that. But is there maybe this additional option for those who are dealing with stress and anxiety, and what role does food play in your opinion?
Absolutely. As we go through, we'll talk about foods to help with anxiety, but right now I just want to say that we can fuel or even create anxiety or depression with the food that we're eating, because food can feed underlying viral pathogens in the body, and a lot of them are somewhat responsible for anxiety. So by eating things like corn, soy, canola oil, eggs, dairy, beet sugar. He explains this in his first book, Medical Medium. Artificial sweeteners, citric acid. These things can actually fuel the pathogens in the body, which can cause or, even make anxiety, depression worse. So absolutely, the food that we eat can fuel the anxiety. And as we talk, we'll talk about things that can help with anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like that you brought up things like eggs and soy. I know that in my practice that's been coming up a lot lately. People are just like, they've been getting the wrong information their whole lives, and it is so hard for them to finally realize that those types of foods are bad and that there are vegetables, plants that are actually bad and can do damage and cause anxiety. So what foods exactly can we focus on? What foods can we consume that are going to really calm the nervous system and the brain?
Yeah, so yellow and orange foods are like liquid sunshine. So bananas and oranges, are amazing. Mangoes. Anthony says that mangoes take the heat. Mangoes have helped me through so many stressful situations. Mm-hmm. I love to do mangoes with coconut water in a smoothie if I feel really burnt out or stressed. Lemon balm tea, potatoes are extremely grounding, and my personal favorite, honey. Honey is just an adaptogen. It just really helps our body deal with stress.
Mm-hmm. Those are great suggestions. I love the mango coconut water idea. I have not tried that, but it's definitely going to be top of my list this week.
Absolutely.
So we're all under so much stress these days, especially with the holidays coming up. And as Anthony called it in a recent radio show, I remember he was talking about putting out fires. And he was saying, that there are these literal fires that are going on in your brain. We call it putting out fires in our day-to-day relations and things like that, but there are actual fires in the brain. So that stuck with me. But I talk to women all the time who say that they just don't have enough time to eat, or that they forget to eat. So how might this whole not eating enough thing, how might that impact mood, or why is it so important to eat or get food throughout the day?
Yeah, so women and men, I mean, all in general, you know, we're brought up to grab and go, you know, it's grab a cup of coffee and go, or grab something quick and run out the door. But our adrenal glands are directly related to fight or flight in our bodies. From the newest book, Liver Rescue, I quote, "Whenever there's excess adrenaline in the bloodstream, the liver must try to absorb and neutralize the hormone." So anything that's good for the liver is also good for the adrenal glands. So when we're going longer, when we're going longer than 90 minutes to 2 hours without eating, it stresses our adrenal glands, and it allows the body to, quote-unquote, panic. It can go into a fight-or-flight response and cause us to feel like we're in chaos. So certain amounts of stress in our life keep us motivated, right? It keeps us going, it keeps us moving and moving forward. But an overabundance of stress can be detrimental to our bodies, our nervous system, our adrenals, and ultimately our liver. So what we want to do to override the stress response is to feed our bodies a constant supply of glucose and mineral salts. So, for example, Anthony talks about eating something like celery, apples, and dates every 90 minutes to 2 hours. If you're feeling extremely anxious, dealing with tons of stress, do it every hour. If I know I'm going into a very stressful season or, you know, situation, I will snack still every hour just to help to calm the body down, to keep myself out of fight or flight.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned dates. We've talked about coconut water and all of these amazing foods. But, I mean, is there like a number one adaptogenic food out there, or, you know, if someone really wants to focus on one thing, or a superfood that might benefit us most when it comes to stress or anxiety?
Yeah, so there's actually two if you're in this world. Wild blueberries are number one.
Oh, absolutely.
And celery juice is number two. If you have not done so already, if you jump on Instagram and follow Medical Medium, there's another hashtag, celery juice benefits. You will see the thousands of lives that are being transformed by bringing these two things into the diet. We've seen people reversing all kinds of things, and mood issues being, you know, the forefront.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I get this question all the time. You know, people ask, or they say, I really can't tolerate the celery juice. It's so strong. Can I combine it with anything? Can you speak to that? Can they combine?
Sure.
Can they combine the celery with apple juice, cucumber, anything like that?
Yeah, so straight celery juice is what you want to. That's your goal. So at the end of the day, you want to be consuming straight celery juice, even if it's, you know, an ounce at a time and you build up over time. But for little kids or people that really can't handle it, or it feels too detoxifying, you can either start with a tiny little amount, or you can use a little bit of red apple juice in there with it and then decrease it over time. You could do some cucumber, and if celery altogether is hard, you could do cucumber and red apple juice. Again, always bringing down the amount of apple and increasing so that you're getting more towards just, you know, bring down the apple, more cucumber juice, and then getting to straight celery when you can.
Mm-hmm. That's really great. And I was just thinking, too, you know, different brands of celery have different flavors for some reason. I don't really know why, but some of them are a little bit more tolerable if you're just getting started with the celery juice. So I would maybe experiment with a couple different brands too.
Yeah, and it depends on the season. Some seasons the celery tastes really good, and other seasons it tastes really bad. So just kind of experimenting with, you know, locally what you can get your hands on and trying to find the best match.
Yeah, all really good advice. So what other foods are there that you would recommend for enhancing mood or for dealing with stress and anxiety?
Yeah, so anything that protects and enhances liver function will assist the adrenal glands. So apples are really important. Asparagus, apricots, sea vegetables such as dulse, all berries, especially wild blueberries, celery, cherries, coconut water, the fruits that we discussed before, orange and yellow. And I also wanted to say, I know we're talking about food, but I wanted to throw 2 herbs out there, too, because they're easy enough to get in tea form. Lemon balm and nettle tea are very amazing for anxiety, depression, adrenals, liver, all of it. It's all connected, so that's what's so beautiful. And also vitamin C is really important for the liver and the adrenals. So oranges and kiwis, this time of year, juicing oranges and kiwis, super high in vitamin C, and will really help with mood.
That's great. And, lemon balm really doesn't get the recognition that it deserves, in my opinion. We talk a lot about ashwagandha and holy basil, which are awesome, too. But we really need to start talking a little bit more, I think, about lemon balm when it comes to mood, because it's just such a great, great herb. So, this week, talking to a few women in my practice, it keeps coming up that women are just so afraid of fruit nowadays, and they say it's because of the sugar, or I hear a lot of times my doctor said, that if I want to lose weight, I can't have the fruit, or they say, and this is really funny, they'll tell me I can have 1 piece per day, like it's a cheat or something, and later down the road they'll tell me that they feel agitated or tired or kind of like off balance. Can you talk a little bit about this whole fruit fear thing and what role fruit really plays in balancing mood?
Yeah, so people are so afraid of fruit these days. It is such a sin. And doctors are right there telling people, low carb and no fruit and cut it all out. But the truth is, fruit is what we need to thrive. Fruit repairs our bodies on such a deep level, physically and emotionally. Anyone that's afraid of fruit really needs to get a copy of these books. The second book being called Life-Changing Foods. And it really talks about not just the physical aspects of all the food, but also the emotional. And I can say, as someone that fell into that trap, I fell into the trap when I first was diagnosed. Fell into the trap of a paleo diet, and everything about it felt wrong to me intuitively. It felt wrong. But doctor after doctor saying, cut out the fruit, cut out the carbs, eliminating fruit almost. I remember my first pregnancy, I'd eat 1 banana a day, and I'd feel so guilty about it because that's what I was told. And I can wholeheartedly say that fruit has completely changed my body, my mind, my spirit. I never had anxiety until I cut out the fruit. And I'm not talking about 1 banana a day. I'm talking about a diet that revolves around fruit as a staple, because our brains need glucose. And when we starve our brain of glucose, we feel anxious, we feel depressed, we feel exhausted. Our body is screaming for glucose, and that's why people are having cravings and mood crashes and all of those things. And people feeling agitated after having 1 piece of fruit is because they're probably eating 1 piece of fruit and they're already calorie starved in other areas. So when we're eating a lot of fruit, we need to be eating often. We need to get enough calories in. In our society, we want to get really quick. We want to eat this high protein or high fat meal and stay full for 6 hours. That's not really how the body is designed to work. We need to be eating frequently, every hour and a half to 2 hours. If we're really ill or struggling with emotions, we need to eat every hour for a while. Because the glucose and the mineral salts is what is going to bring us out of that. It's what's going to fuel our brain to feel good.
Yes, and I love that you brought up pregnancy, because I feel like that is such a critical time for women to really believe in the power of fruit and be bringing more and more fruit in. So you have a new addition to the family, and I think your littlest one, I think she just turned 1, didn't she?
Yeah.
Oh, congratulations. She is
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So I have to ask, what advice do you have for all of the new moms out there? Everyone who's feeling stressed or overwhelmed, what advice do you have?
Yeah, so our expectations of ourselves in our society right now, it's really crazy. Everything is at our fingertips. Everything is fast, and answer that email and answer that call, and, everything is fast. And as moms, we just go and go and go and go and go. We're expected to pop a baby out, bounce back, jump back onto the scrambling in life. That's not normal. We don't rest. We don't take time for ourselves. Some women have a couple, maybe 6 weeks off with their babies. That's just crazy. So So it's important to really address mind, body, spirit. For new moms, self-care is really important. And a lot of times it's impossible because we don't have a village. We don't really have the support. It's just, dad's at work and mom's home with kids. So it is hard. But I have to say, even if it's 5 minutes a day, self-care is so important. My favorite ways, meditations. Anthony has great ones in the back of his first book. EFT, meridian tapping, which I know you're probably familiar with. It helps to shift the sympathetic nervous system back into parasympathetic. I'm really into yoga therapy, using the foods and the herbs and all of those things to just bring the body back into balance and to really help the adrenals. Because the lack of sleep, when you're a new mom, and I'm still dealing with some of that, we have molars coming in. So just really relying on a cup of tea, grounding, sitting outside, breathing fresh air, it's really so important. And I just want to say, too, for new moms that are struggling, anxiety and depression is huge postpartum. And I just want moms to know that there's always hope. We see clients all the time that have exhausted so many options. They're handed a pill, they're handed a script. They don't want that. And oftentimes a lot of our clients have seen the best doctors and psychiatrists and practitioners. But ultimately, it's Anthony's life-saving information that finally brings them healing, because we can help them to facilitate mind, body, soul. And it really, really helps to, learn how to use food as medicine to help to reverse, anxiety, depression, and bring the nervous system back into balance.
Wow, Kimberly, that's beautifully said. So if you want to learn more about reclaiming your health, you can visit Kimberly through her website, which is reclaimersofhealth.com. From there, you can message. You can schedule an appointment with her through her team. You should also add Reclaimers of Health through Facebook at facebook.com/reclaimersofhealth. Kimberly, thank you so much for being here today. You are a true inspiration.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lindsay. It was great connecting with you, and it was so wonderful being on the show and connecting with so many of you.
Thank you. Take care, Kimberly. So we're going to take a short break, and when we return, we will continue the conversation around food for mood. Please stay tuned.
Web radio for your life. HealthyLife.net.
So if you're just tuning in, earlier we heard from holistic healer Kimberly Spair. Again, you can visit Kimberly at her website, which is reclaimersofhealth.com, to learn more, or you can add Reclaimers of Health to your Facebook page and stay up to date that way. So today's show is all about food for mood and knowing what foods are best for your mood. Most of us are eating throughout the day. We're eating 3 meals and some snacks. We heard from Kimberly Spair why it is so important to eat at least once every 2 to 3 hours, and if you're feeling really, really bad, eating every hour. And these choices are what build up our strength to really be able to feel our best. So, again, like I said earlier in the show, generally when someone is suffering from anxiety or depression, we offer them one of 2 choices or both choices, which is to find a mental health practitioner, maybe a psychiatrist, maybe a therapist, and many times a person will be offered anxiolytics or anti-anxiety medications or antidepressant medications, but rarely is nutrition really looked at as a primary mode of addressing anxiety. Most times it's kind of thrown in there as what they call a complementary approach. So, like Kimberly pointed out earlier, what if you're eating foods that are causing anxiety, or at the least, what if you're eating foods that are triggering your anxiety? And what if your body is deficient in certain minerals or nutrients, and the anxiety that you're experiencing is really your body's way of telling you that something's wrong? Or like Kimberly brought up earlier, what if you have a viral condition, and that condition might be wreaking havoc on your nervous system, causing a lot of these anxiety symptoms. As a practitioner and a coach, I like to at least have these types of conversations around things, around food in particular. I just feel like it doesn't get really the attention that it deserves. And if you look at the research for anxiolytics or antidepressants, they might work for a while. but symptoms almost always return. And many times symptoms of anxiety are actually worse than when they started, or a lot of users risk becoming dependent on medications to mask symptoms, or in some cases medications actually cause anxiety or make anxiety worse. So, just trying to have a conversation around some alternative ways to feel better and to get better. And anxiety can come up for a number of different reasons, as can any mental health condition, one being a poor diet. Just thinking back to when I worked on a crisis unit or when I worked in a psychiatric hospital. I also worked on the psych floor at a couple of jails. I've worked in detox units, residential treatment centers. And, what were the patients eating most days? Usually like a gluten-filled pasta covered in, they put mozzarella cheese on there, Parmesan cheese, maybe some canned green beans, maybe a dinner roll thrown on a plate and some Jell-O. A lot of the residential treatment centers I worked in, they would have like a pizza day. Usually family would come. It was kind of like a celebration. And that was pretty much every week or every other week. So you see a lot of the same thing in hospitals. And there aren't any groups on nutrition or eating. It just it's not really talked about. And the patients are usually given the cheapest food around. And, to be honest, these are people who are usually at the lowest point of their lives and many times who are dealing with serious mental health issues, who probably need good nutrition and nutrients and vitamins and supplementation, now more than ever in their lives. So, in my opinion, there should be a fruit basket on every table and every counter in detox and residential treatments. When the nurse walks around and she pushes the cart with the medications on it, right behind that cart there really should be a fruit cart. And maybe you think that's funny, but the special sugar and fruit, just like Kimberly said, it's exactly what most people need in these types of care centers. These foods are going to do what medication really can't. And they will heal and revive a person physically. They'll revive you mentally, emotionally, even spiritually, if you believe in that sort of thing. In addition, therapists and psychiatrists rarely talk about food. And it's the one thing that we're all already doing. We're all eating. And it's probably the most important determinant for how we feel. The saying really should be, not you are what you eat, but you feel what you eat, because that's the truth. But at least we have quite a few doctors, medical doctors, psychiatrists who are starting to engage in these conversations now. Doctors like Mark Hyman and Dr. Drew Ramsey of Columbia University. I posted their recent interview on my Facebook page the other day. I know a lot of you watched it already and enjoyed it, and that's awesome. I think Dr. Ramsey mentioned a few statistics about food. I have one of them here. He said, if you eat processed foods, you have a 50 to 100% increased chance of depression, and that blew my mind. I mean, if you want to talk about correlations, that's a big one right there. 50 to 100% increased chance of depression if you eat processed foods. Then he talks about the prison studies and that show a decrease in rates of violence by improving nutrition. It's all really interesting stuff. And like I said, I worked in a couple of jails, so I know the food there isn't the best, and certainly not in the areas where those with severe mental health issues are housed. So, again, we are talking about foods for mood today. Earlier we heard from Kimberly Spair about what foods we should eat if we're looking to improve our mood or to gain relief from anxiety or depression. And, I have people who come to me all the time, and they're just overwhelmed by all of the information out there and the contradicting information out there. And again, like we talked about in the last couple of shows, we have a conversation around becoming more conscious. Because when you live consciously, you're aware of what you do, you're aware of what you're eating and what you're ingesting, you're constantly learning, and, becoming more wise about food. My family always laughs when we go out to eat because I ask so many questions. I get so nervous when we eat at restaurants. I ask so many questions about the food, and I end up just getting a salad or something. But I can't mindlessly put food in my mouth anymore. It's just over time it becomes more difficult. So if you want to be part of this conversation and other conversations around health, mental health, well-being, and more, please add me on Facebook, Dr. Lindsay Ghannam, or you can visit my website at omgoddess.com to learn more. And we are going to take another very short break, but when we get back, I will be answering your questions, so please stay tuned. So if you're just tuning in, you may have missed my interview with Kimberly Spair at the top of the hour. Kimberly Spair of Reclaimers of Health. What an amazing interview, by the way. So much information in that interview. So if you missed it, please be sure to go back and listen. So today we're talking about food for mood, and I asked you to email your questions. Thank you to everyone who did. Great questions this month around food for mood. I had a lot of questions around the holidays. People asking for recipes, how to steer clear of the hazardous foods out there. So this brings to mind another statistic from Dr. Drew Ramsey. He had mentioned that somewhere between something like 70 to 80% of all food soon is going to be prepared by somebody else, and that's kind of a big deal when you think about it. We really need to start moving away from quick and easy and get back to fresh, whole foods prepared with family. This is how, this is really how we're going to teach our kids how to cook and what to eat. And I'm not talking about cooking in a traditional sense, because I know I was raised to believe that when you cook, you need things like milk, you need the eggs, of course, you got to have lots of butter, all of those things to have a meal, right? And this is really, it's no joke, because a lot of this stuff has been ingrained into us since an early age, and it's deeply rooted in many of us. Think about holidays, think about traditions, sitting around the fireplace, eating cookies, drinking chocolate milk, having a feast with a huge bird in the middle of the table. It isn't going to be easy, because all of this is tied to so much emotion, like since we were kids, right? So, and if you think about when we're connecting with someone, what do we call that? We call it breaking bread. And then you have breadwinners, and the money is the bread and the butter, and the most important part is the meat and potatoes. And I like the potatoes anyway. But this is how we think about food, and it's expressed in so many ways. It's in our metaphors, it's in our language. It's important to take just a little bit of time and kind of acknowledge the emotional aspect of food. So, in my house nowadays, I'll cook a potato, put a little bit of sea salt in there, some onions, maybe some spinach, and that's like a meal to me. And, my 1-year-old doesn't really care. He'll eat kale and seaweed out of a tube, but with my 10-year-old, he's a different story, because he wasn't raised that way. I didn't know when I was 23 or 24 years old, when he was a baby and a toddler. I didn't know what healthy was. I was probably, what I like to call the unhealthiest vegetarian out there. So I have to work with him. It takes a lot of patience and some trickery. I'm sure some of you know what I'm talking about. But just don't lose hope. Even the toughest and pickiest eaters, they come around in certain ways. It's possible. Don't give up. So looking at food as a way to help with anxiety, especially if anxiety is coming up for you kind of out of the clear blue, you might just want to take a look at what you're consuming. So let's take a look at gluten. I get questions about gluten all the time, but I feel like I got twice as many this month, probably because of the holiday. Gluten is pretty well known for bringing about anxiety and depression, especially for those who are really sensitive to it. And honestly, I think everyone's sensitive to it. It can also cause things like acne or severe stomach issues, anemia, brain fog, headaches, vertigo, insomnia, or any type of sleep issue, or even ADHD. All those things have been linked to gluten. So going gluten-free for, giving it a shot for maybe 3 months is a really, really good start. Then at least you can kind of see if there's any correlation there. Some researchers also talk about how gluten has actually been linked to intestinal damage, and this is really interesting because if that occurs, that can actually impair the body's ability to absorb nutrients like B vitamins, which can definitely contribute to anxiety. So let's talk for just a minute about gluten-free, because this came up on my Facebook page a couple weeks back. Gluten-free does not necessarily mean good for me. A lot of gluten-free manufacturers are absolutely thrilled that all we want removed from the snack food is the gluten because that's super easy. So instead they're adding, all of the no foods that Kimberly talked about. You've got your corn and your soy and your canola oil, eggs, yeast. They put lots of sugar in there and natural flavors and preservatives and things like that. So here you think you're getting this healthy snack because it's gluten-free, but you just got to be really, really careful. And I'll be honest, I've scoured all the different grocery stores, and I haven't really found any gluten-free products that are really, really good, other than a couple maybe gluten-free pastas. There are a couple good ones out there. Someone had posted on my Facebook page the other day, she said something to the effect of, if it's got a label on it, consider it a warning label. And I like that because it's really true. But the main point is, maybe you think you're doing all the right things, but some of the bad foods are making their way in, and they're impacting you, making you anxious, making you tired, making you feel depressed, and you don't even realize it. And I had someone this week, she wrote into the show, and she was a little bit frustrated. She says here, I feel like I've tried all of this already, and I feel like giving up. I've been eating more healthily for several months, and my anxiety doesn't seem to be getting better. And, my first response to that was, please be patient. I'm not saying that food is going to cure your anxiety. I would never make that claim. In fact, looking for a cure is going to set you up probably for some disappointment because, you have to think more in terms of wellness and in terms of healing. But setting up your body to heal itself and building an armor to get through life's challenges, that's really most important. Second piece of that is what exactly are you doing? Again, a lot of these packaged foods, they sneak in a lot of the foods that contribute to anxiety and depression, like soy and corn and canola oil, all the things that we've talked about. So just be really, really, really careful. And like we talked about earlier, it doesn't happen overnight. Thinking about how you grew up, thinking about your holidays and your traditions. So just, do the best that you can. Make small changes every single day. Live a more conscious life. Try to become more knowledgeable about food. And just do the best that you can. So we're going to take a very, very short break. And when we get back, I have a question here. It's about supplements. So stay tuned, and we'll be back after this short break. Today's episode is all about food for mood, and earlier today we heard from Kimberly Spair. If you're just tuning in, thanks for joining. If you have a question for the show, please be sure to send it my way at Lindsay@OwnGoddess.com. That's LINDSAY @OwnGoddess.com. And like I always say, questions are 100% confidential. That means I will never say your name. I won't say your state or any details, so please feel comfortable asking whatever you want around anxiety and natural solutions. You can also visit my Facebook page at facebook.com-OwnGoddessOnline or facebook.com-Dr. Lindsay Ghannam and post questions there. Just scroll down and look for that month's questions post. So my next question is there a miracle supplement or a top supplement I can take to help with anxiety. And for that, I have to say no, because everyone is different. And Kimberly brought up lemon balm. That's a great herb for anxiety, but it's not going to do everything. So, and everyone's different, and everyone may be deficient in different things. However, most of you know how much I really love spirulina in support of good mental health. If you're looking for a miracle supplement, that might be the closest thing that you're going to get. And I know I sound kind of like a broken record every month, but this supplement, it has so much in it. It's like 10 supplements in one. And even Anthony Williams, the medical medium, talks about how you may as well replace your daily multivitamin with a mixture of spirulina and barley grass juice powder. It's that amazing. And don't forget to sneak it into your kids' juice. It's a little easier for me to do this with my younger one, but I still get a little bit into my 10-year-old juice cup too. It's a great anxiety supplement. Start with that. Maybe consider getting a good B-complex vitamin to start with, a good B12 vitamin. There's a lot of really good anti-anxiety herbs. Again, Kimberly mentioned lemon balm. You've got valerian root. That's great for sleep. Holy basil, ashwagandha, amazing adaptogenic herbs. It's really hard for me to pick just one. I know I mentioned reishi earlier and chaga. I just want to throw those in there where I can. I mean, do whatever calls to you. Your body knows in a very special way what it's lacking. And you also have a spiritual support system that you may not be aware of that can really guide you to picking the foods and the supplements that you really need. Just stay away from trends or fads. They can feel really right sometimes based on all of the hype that surround them, when in actuality they do more harm than good. Lots of trendy supplements out there and things that might have been helpful, if they didn't have alcohol or other ingredients in them. So just be really careful with that. Overall, you just want to make sure that you're giving your body that support, that you're staying hydrated so your body's cells can perform their vital functions. You don't necessarily need a supplement to do that, right? You just talk about, we talk a lot about bringing in 11 servings of water every day, which is really important. Make sure that you are cooling and calming the brain with good living water, like lemon water, water with honey, water with ginger, that kind of thing. Make sure that you're eating the right foods, like Kimberly talked about a lot earlier, those types of things that will support your nervous system, and stay away from all of the no foods that she talked about, soy, corn. Of course, we talked a lot about gluten, chocolate. It can make your heart race, make you feel more anxious. Try to stay away from those things. All of those ingredients are going to work against you. Bring in the celery juice that Kimberly talked about. Celery juice it's a miracle elixir. It changed my life, and I have watched it change the lives of thousands of other people. It is amazing for mental health. And in my opinion, every mental health practitioner out there should really be talking with their clients about juicing, juicing in general. It doesn't have to be celery. I mean, that's really the most important juice in my opinion. But juicing in general is a really great practice to start your day. And, I know that if you're dealing with anxiety, these things are going to help you. They're going to give you good support to heal on a physical and emotional level. They'll give you additional strength to kind of get through your day and deal with normal stress from things that come up from, our relations with people, our interactions with people, stuff that's coming up from your past. Not saying stress or anxiety is going to melt away, but it's just giving yourself that armor that you need to be able to cope and tend to the body. And it's not all about food or drink either. There's a lot of different things that you can do to work toward reducing anxiety. Nutrition is just one component, albeit it's probably the most important in my book. But, I always try to look at the whole person. And, as Kimberly mentioned several times, looking at the body, looking at the mind, and looking at the spirit to see what work really needs to be done, because we're pretty complex. We're all different, and mental health challenges like anxiety can come about for so many different reasons. But we are body, mind, and spirit. We can't really get around that. And when we need help, it's best to look at each of these things and, at the very least have a conversation around each. So at the very least, when I worked at those places I mentioned earlier, hospitals, treatment centers, I was always impressed with how much they did acknowledge spirituality and religion. There was at least one question on every intake form that talked a little bit about spirituality, and at the very least got the client to start thinking about it. So we're spiritual beings having a human experience. Not to acknowledge that part of ourselves, it isn't natural. So it sets the course for healing. I mean, who has really, really been sick or had someone close to them get sick and not prayed? Most people do pray. If you don't, that's totally cool. But it's a practice that humankind is engaged in for since the beginning of humanity. So we should at the very least talk about it, bring it up. It's not about religion. If you're religious, that's cool too. If you're spiritual, if you believe in simple energy, radio waves, Wi-Fi, whatever gets the client to think about invisible forces is cool in my book. If you believe in nothing, we talk about that because all of that matters. It all matters to me. So there's a lot to talk about when it comes to wellness, and I'm so grateful for this show. I hope that you took a few things away today. Thank you so much for being here and tuning in and for supporting me in my mission to help women with anxiety. It's near and dear to my heart. I hope that together we can make some really big changes. Please don't forget to visit my Facebook page. Give me an ad if we're not already friends. Excited about next month's show. Be sure to tune in and take care, everyone.
Oh.